Welcome to Hockey Wiz Talks podcast. Today I'll be previewing the Central Division in the NHL. In this podcast, I preview the Central Division in order in which I think they will finish at season's end. 1. Colorado Avalanche. Colorado Avalanche are the defending Stanley Cup champions, and usually the defending champs have to deal with losing a lot of key players due to the salary cap. Fortunately for Colorado, they were not affected much by it. The only key player they lost was Darcy Kemper, and they were able to replace him by trading for Alexander Georgiev. The Avs also lost Andrei Burakovsky, who was used sparingly in his last year in Colorado, as well as depth players like Nico Sturm, Nicholas Abe-Kubel, and Ryan Murray. With the Nathan MacKinnon extension this week, Colorado has now locked up all of their core players and will have the same core for the next 5 years. To replace Burakovsky and some depth players they lost, Colorado re-signed Arturi Lehkonen and signed Evan Rodriguez. Josh Manson, who was a big part of last year's Stanley Cup team after being acquired in a trade from Anaheim, was re-signed to a 4-year deal. The Avs D-core is the envy of the league, with Cale Makar, Devon Taves, Bowen Byram, Sam Girard, Josh Manson, and Eric Johnson. This defense is deadly and is good enough to offset the fact that their goaltending isn't that great. Pavel Francois and Alexander Georgiev are not really NHL caliber starting goalies. However, if they are playing behind Colorado's defense and a high-powered offense, they should do a good enough job. Colorado virtually has no competition in the Central Division and should be favorites to win the Stanley Cup again. 2. Minnesota Wild. The Minnesota Wild may not appear to be a threatening team on paper, but they are an excellent team that is well coached by Dean Evason. In the 2022 draft, the Minnesota Wild stole Danila Yurov with the 24th pick. Yurov is a top 10 talent, and he could be an important part of their core down the road. Minnesota is led by superstar winger Kirill Kaprizov, one of the most exciting players to watch in the league today. The checking line, which consists of Joel Eriksson centering Marcus Foligno and Jordan Greenway, is played like a second line and is arguably their most important line behind the Kaprizov line. Two young forwards to watch this year are Marco Rossi and Matt Boldy, both former first-round picks of the Wild and highly touted prospects who could be a major part of their core. The defense may not appear to be outstanding, but it is a very solid group led by Captain Jared Spurgeon, joined by Jonas Brodin and Matt Dumba. Jacob Middleton, who was acquired in a trade deadline trade last year, could have a bigger role on defense this year, and Kalen Addison, who was acquired in the Jason Zucker trade, could eventually see time on the power play by season's end. Marc-Andre Fleury is expected to be the starting goalie now that they traded away Cam Talbot. He will play a vital role if Minnesota is going to hold off St. Louis for the second spot in the division. Many people are overlooking the Minnesota Wild because they may not have the big names outside of Kaprizov, but make no mistake about it, they are as complete a team as there is in the Western Conference, and they should be a safe bet to be a top 3 seed in the division. And now a word from our sponsor. Check out my scouting blog at hockeywiz777scouting.com. Listen to my scouting blog podcast on anchor.fm/hockeywiz777scouting. 3. St. Louis Blues. The St. Louis Blues should still be contenders in the Central Division because for the most part, they have the same team as last year. The only major subtraction from the team is goaltender Ville Husso, but they were able to sign Thomas Greiss to back up Jordan Binnington. St. Louis re-signed 2 of their core players in Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou to matching 8-year deals, and they also brought in Noel Acciari to center their 4th line. Players to watch this season are Ryan O'Reilly and Vladimir Tarasenko, who are both UFAs in 2023. They should both have great seasons in their contract year because they want to get paid. Nick Leddy, who was a UFA, re-signed with St. Louis for 4 more years. He is a veteran defenseman with playoff experience and will help stabilize the blue line. The defense as a whole is quite solid with Colton Parayko, Justin Falk, Torrey Krug, and Nick Leddy expected to play major minutes this year. And Scott Perunovich could also see some playing time this season in the event that Torrey Krug is out with injury. Jordan Binnington will be the workhorse in net this season, and the team will have to hope that Binnington plays like he did in the playoffs last year and not like he did in the regular season. Since the St. Louis Blues are almost in a must-win situation, with O'Reilly and Tarasenko's future still unknown, the Blues will likely go all in this season to try to win a Stanley Cup this year. However, they will have to battle the powerful Colorado Avalanche and the pesky Minnesota Wild. 4. Nashville Predators. The Nashville Predators are my sleeper team in the Central Division. While they may not appear to be that great on paper, they can roll 4 lines and have 3 good D pairs. They are also backstopped by one of the best goalies in UC Saros. In the offseason, Nashville improved their D core by acquiring Ryan McDonough from the Tampa Bay Lightning, taking advantage of Tampa's cap situation. McDonough will add some veteran presence on the blue line and rounds out their top 4, which includes Roman Josi, Matthias Ekholm, and Dante Fabro. Besides re-signing Philip Forsberg for 8 more years, they also signed Nino Niederreiter in free agency to a 2-year deal and Kevin Lankinen to back up UC Saros. The checking line of the Predators, which consists of Tanner Jeannot, Colton Sissons, and Yakov Trenin, is perhaps the best checking line in the league, and is arguably their most consistent line in every game. Matt Duchene and Mikael Granlund both had excellent seasons last year, and they will need to continue to be impact players this year if Nashville is to be a playoff team. 2 young forwards to pay attention to this season are Philip Tomasino and Ilya Tolvanen, who could occasionally find themselves playing on the second line with Granlund and Niederreiter. The Nashville Predators should be good enough to be a wild card team in the Western Conference, and perhaps even contend for 3rd in the Central. Check out my hockey blog at hockeywiztalkshockey.blogspot.com. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at hockeywiz777. 5. Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars are one of the bubble teams in the Western Conference. They have a decent team on paper, but the coaching is questionable, and because of that, it might cost them in this tough Central Division. Realistically, 23-year-old Jake Ottinger should be the workhorse netminder who starts the majority of the games, but because Pete DeBoer has the track record of causing goalie controversies everywhere he goes, you never know. Jason Robertson, who led the team in goals and was second in points last season, is an RFA and is still not signed yet. If they have to start the season without one of their best players, it could be a rough start. A player to watch out for is Tyler Seguin, who had his lowest point total since his last year in Boston last year. Look for him to be a go-to player once again now that DeBoer is head coach. Newcomer Mason Marchment will join Radek Faksa and Luke Glendening on the team's newly formed checking line, which is very important given the division they play in. Dallas wanted to trade with the Rangers to acquire Swedish defenseman Nils Lundqvist, a highly touted defenseman, giving up a 2023 first-round pick in exchange. The defense as a whole seems to be younger and deeper with the additions of Thomas Harley and Nils Lundqvist, and with Miro Heiskanen expected to play a bigger role, Dallas's defense looks solid as long as Jake Ottinger is as advertised in net. The Dallas Stars have potential to be a playoff team, but I don't think they will be because they aren't a better team than Nashville. 6. Winnipeg Jets. The Winnipeg Jets are a team that is stuck in no man's land because on one hand, they aren't good enough to contend for a playoff spot, yet they aren't entirely bad enough to get a top pick in the draft either. So what the Jets might do is try to shop some of their veteran players and rebuild around Kyle Connor, Nikolai Ehlers, and Cole Perfetti. Connor Hellebuck is still considered one of the top goalies in the league. However, he did not play like one last season. 2 players Winnipeg could deal are Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler. If Winnipeg wants to change the culture of the team, these are the 2 players they would want to trade away. Ville Heinola and Dylan Samberg are both NHL ready, but the issue is that there is no room left on defense. So perhaps Winnipeg may want to trade a defenseman or 2 away, like Brendan Dillon or Nate Schmidt. Pierre-Luc Dubois is a player to watch this season because he is on a 1-year contract and rumors are going to be surrounding him all season long. A trade of Dubois may be beneficiary because the Jets may not want a player to bring in negative energy to the locker room. This is going to be an odd season for the Winnipeg Jets. No one knows how well they will do. The team could surprise everyone and make the playoffs, or they can completely disappoint and miss the playoffs again. Winnipeg should be a better team than both Chicago and Arizona, but they will not be good enough to compete with the other teams in their division, unless Hellebuck plays like a Vezina Trophy winner. Listen to Hockey Wiz Talks podcast on Podbean and Spotify. Check out my YouTube channel at Lucas Aoyang. 7. Chicago Blackhawks. How well the Chicago Blackhawks do this year is dependent on if they trade away Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, because as long as they have those 2 players in their lineup, it will hurt their tank effort. The biggest subtraction from the team is Alex DeBrincat, who was traded to Ottawa for 3 draft picks. Besides trading away DeBrincat, Chicago also traded away Kirby Dach in a 3-team trade with the Islanders and Canadiens, which saw Dach being sent to Montreal, Alexander Romanov to Long Island, and Chicago getting the Islanders' first first-round pick. Peter Mrazek was acquired along with a first-round pick in the 2022 draft from the Toronto Maple Leafs in exchange for Chicago's second-round pick in 2022 draft. The Blackhawks had 3 first-round picks in the 2022 draft and used the picks to select Kevin Korchinski, Frank Nazar, and Sam Rinzel. Chicago signed Max Domi, Andreas Athanasiou, and Colin Blackwell. Some solid depth players. Chicago should be very active between now and the trade deadline because many teams will be inquiring about their 2 superstar players, and I would be very shocked if they are not traded by the trade deadline given the position that Chicago is in. Chicago will try to battle Arizona for last in the division, but they most likely will not be bad enough to beat them out in the lottery because they have Patrick Kane. 8. Arizona Coyotes. The Arizona Coyotes are the weakest team in the Central Division this season because they are trying to tank for Connor Bedard. Arizona hasn't really done anything to improve the team and are actively shopping their top players like Jacob Chichurin, Nick Schmaltz, and Shane Gostisbehere. There are a few bright spots on the Arizona Coyotes despite them not being very good. One being Clayton Keller, who had his breakout season last year. He should continue to build upon his success last season and should be a great player for them. Lawson Krause and Barrett Hayton, who are both former first-round picks, will also continue to build on their seasons from last year and will be a big part of the team in 22-23. Karl Vejmelka will be the starting goaltender for Arizona. He won't be getting much help in front of him or much goal support, but at the very least, he has proven to be an NHL caliber goalie. Although the Coyotes may not be very good this year, they will definitely be getting a star player in next year's draft who can be a big part of their core alongside 2022 first-round pick Logan Cooley and Dylan Guenther, who was acquired in the OEL trade. With that said, the Arizona Coyotes should be the worst team in the division and perhaps one of the worst teams in the league. In my next podcast, I preview the Pacific Division.